and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has announced that Germany will halt the export of military equipment to Israel that could be used in its full-scale operation in Gaza. This comes as a response to Israel's full plan for a full-scale military takeover. Merz has said the move reflects Germany's deep concern over the humanitarian impact and escalating violence in the Gaza Strip. UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk has urged Israel to immediately halt its plan for a full-scale military takeover of Gaza. He said the move violates an International Court of Justice ruling and undermines Palestinians' right to self-determination, while Finnish Foreign Minister Elina Valtonen also expressed great worry over Israel's intentions. China has expressed serious concern over Israel's plan to take military control of Gaza, joining a growing international backlash against the move. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong also has condemned the plan, warning it could escalate the violence and deepen the humanitarian crisis. President Trump says the future meeting with President Vladimir Putin would not be contingent on Putin first meeting Ukrainian President Zelensky. The Kremlin signaled the meeting could take place in the UAE, though final logistics remain under discussion. Meanwhile, Finland's foreign minister has urged US President Donald Trump to impose tougher sanctions on Russia, saying it would pressure Moscow to end the war in Ukraine. Trump's deadline for Russia to agree to a peace expired Friday, potentially triggering secondary tariffs on Russian oil customers that could strike a blow to President Vladimir Putin's war funding. China's foreign ministry has publicly supported India over a steep U.S. tariff increase over New Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Guo says China's opposition to abuse of tariff is consistent and clear. U.S. envoy Tom Barak has hailed the historic move from Lebanon to disarm Hezbollah by the end of the year. Meanwhile, Israel has launched an Israeli airstrike in eastern Lebanon, killing at least 5 and wounding 10, despite a ceasefire since last November. President Xi Jinping has ordered all-out rescue operations after flash floods killed 10 people and left 33 missing in China's Gansu province. According to local state broadcaster, the floods triggered by torrential rain swept through northwestern China, prompting a massive emergency response. Germany is suspending all arms exports to Israel that could be used in the Gaza Strip. Chancellor Friedrich Merz says the move, Berlin's strongest stance yet, comes as Israel's cabinet approves an expanded military offensive in Gaza. Merz says it's becoming increasingly difficult to see how the stated goals, like freezing hostages or disarming Hamas, can be achieved through the current strategy. The Dutch foreign minister says Gaza belongs to the Palestinians, calling the humanitarian situation catastrophic, but criticizing Berlin's decision as unhelpful in securing hostage releases. Turkey is urging the UN Security Council to take binding action against Israel and calling for an immediate ceasefire and a two-state solution. In London, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer says Israel's plan to take control of Gaza City is wrong and will only lead to more bloodshed. Hamas has labeled the move a new war crime and warns Israel will pay dearly if the operation goes ahead. Now, for this discussion, we are joined by Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert, joins us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you, Yossi, for joining us today. Good to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Now, how significant is this Germany's decision to suspend arms export to Israel?
Well, it's not significant by itself because we don't use much German munition in our battles, and we are relying mostly on our own production and on American production. But it's significant in a totally different angle. It is as if the German Chancellor is supporting Hamas. Who can understand that? We are fighting against Hamas, a terror organization that carried out a terrible massacre of Jews on October 7th. We are trying to uproot it from controlling Gaza so that there will not be another 7th of October happening. And guess who's coming to the rescue of Hamas? The leader of Germany. It's unbelievable, really unbelievable. I don't understand what Chancellor Merz is doing. What is he trying to achieve? We were trying to reach a deal about the release of the hostages with Hamas to no avail because Hamas refused to continue negotiating with us. A deal that was supported by the United States and by Qatar and by Egypt. Hamas decided not to go for the deal. And that's why we were left without any other option to release the hostages, but putting pressure on Hamas, trying by force to make him adopt a different opinion, a different approach, and accept a deal. And it's unbelievable that the European countries like France, like United Kingdom, and mostly surprising is Germany, coming to the rescue of Hamas. What's going on here?
And Yossi, could this lead to broader European policy changes towards Israel's military operations? Do you think other countries might follow?
Well, yes, you know, those countries decided already to declare that they are going to recognize a Palestinian state, which is Hamas immediately came out and said, this is the outcome of 7th of October attack. Look how great the attack of 7th of October was. We made progress in moving towards establishing a state. And the British Prime Minister said that even if Hamas does all kinds of things, we shall nevertheless go and recognize a Palestinian state. We will not let Hamas stop us from recognizing a Palestinian state, which made Hamas even stronger. This entire policy is beyond understanding. It's a very strange policy of the Europeans. And this is not going to have any impact on the ground. The situation on the ground is going to be the same. And the battle is going to be fought, and there's not going to be a Palestinian state, and nothing is going to change on the ground. But it's just the feeling of Hamas that they are gaining, and because of that they become even more stubborn and more against doing any progress towards a deal. As I said, it's an unbelievable situation. And beyond that, many of the people in the West are saying that they don't want us to move into Gaza because they fear about what's going to happen to the Palestinian population. Well, in fact, it's just the opposite. If we move into Gaza, then we should make sure that the Palestinian population gets the aid that now doesn't reach them because Hamas loots the aid on its way.
Yes, Yossi, we will discuss this as well for our next story. Please stay with us. As Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declared a full-scale invasion of Gaza, Israelis in Tel Aviv are now opposing the expansion of the war. The residents are saying that bringing the hostages home should be the priority. Israel's political security cabinet approved Netanyahu's plan earlier today as the country expands its military operations despite intensifying criticism in Israel and abroad over the devastating almost 2-year-old war. Meanwhile, Hamas in a statement has called Netanyahu's comments a blatant coup against the negotiation process. There are 50 hostages still held in Gaza, of whom Israeli officials believe 20 are still alive. Most of those freed so far emerged as a result of diplomatic negotiations. Opposing Israeli Prime Minister's announcement, here's what the residents of Tel Aviv had to say.
I think it's a death sentence to hold the hostage that are still being held there. It's the wrong decision to do it at this time. I think that we have to bring all the hostages back home safely. Afterwards, if they decide to take over the entire Gaza Strip, it's their decision. I think we should do something about the Hamas anyway, but not at this time.
It's true that Hamas is refusing to the deal, and this is what the Prime Minister said is the only way. However, the Prime Minister said a few things that never happened. And unfortunately, almost 700 days after October, we still have 50 hostages in Gaza, and still Israeli soldiers are being killed. And We need to have a serious change.
I think, first and foremost, we need to bring the hostages home. That's most important. And after that, I think that the war in Gaza needs to end because so many soldiers are dying. And it just doesn't seem like there's any clear plan moving forward. So unless there's a clear plan, we should end the war, bring the hostages home, and stop so many soldiers from.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Yossi Cooper-Wasser. He's an Israeli intelligence and security expert. Thank you, Yossi, for staying with us. Now, looking at increasing domestic opposition towards Israel's expanding to the war in Gaza, how do you assess the pressure on President Netanyahu to prioritize hostage negotiations over its military operations?
I don't think there's growing opposition to the government. It's the same division that we have experienced in Israel for a long time. There are those who are against the government, those who are in favor of the government. And the goals of Netanyahu are to defeat Hamas and bring all the hostages back. That's what he wants to accomplish for a long time. We did manage to bring back about 200 of the hostages, not through only diplomatic means, but through military pressure that was translated into diplomatic achievements. And but when we are left with only 20 living hostages, Hamas' readiness to show flexibility is limited, and they left the negotiations. The reason why we don't manage to bring more through negotiations is that Hamas left the negotiations. They don't want to listen to anybody, and they stick to their policies that they would be ready to discuss the release of the hostages only if we succumb to all of their demands and actually give up. That's something that's not acceptable for the government. We understand many people say, let's give up. And there's a school of thought in Israel that says, let's give up just in order to get the hostages back. It's not accepted by the government. It's not accepted by many others in Israel, because we understand what is the price of giving up. And the idea that we shall give up now and 2 seconds later we shall resume the war once we get the hostages back is assessing that Hamas are a bunch of stupid people that would not guarantee that this was not going to happen when they release the hostages. They are not stupid. And that's why this is not going to happen, and we know that. And that's why we have to make sure that we reach both goals simultaneously. Defeat Hamas and bring back the hostages. It's, fighting a war is a problematic thing, and the price is to be paid. We can't fight a war without paying any price. Everybody pays a price for this war. Hamas paid a heavy price. We are paying a heavy price. The population in Gaza is paying a price. Everybody is paying a price because of this war that was imposed on Israel. We didn't begin this war. This war began on 7th of October 2023 by Hamas. It was this terrible massacre. And we know that we cannot allow Hamas to stay in power, because they repeatedly said they're going to carry out another 7th of October.
Yossi, thank you very much, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, for joining us and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news. The U.S. has welcomed a decision by Beirut to instruct the Lebanese armed forces to draw up plans to bring all weapons under state control by the end of this year. Principal Deputy Spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, Tommy Pigott, emphasized that this is considered an important step towards Lebanese sovereignty. He also stated that the U.S. is closely monitoring developments in Lebanon. Let's listen in.
Says the United States welcomes the Lebanese government's decision on Tuesday to task the Lebanese armed forces with a plan to bring all weapons under state control by the end of the year. This is an important step towards Lebanese sovereignty. We continue to watch developments in Lebanon very closely. Special Envoy Tom Barrack made it clear what the president needs to see. As long as Hezbollah retains arms, words will not suffice. The Lebanese armed forces must fully commit and act now to fully implement the government's decision. The credibility of Lebanon's government rests on its ability to match principle with practice.
The United States has presented Lebanon with a proposal for disarming Hezbollah, along with ending Israel's military operations in the country and the withdrawal of its troops from 5 positions in South Lebanon. In a cabinet meeting held by the Lebanese army, detailed steps for disarming Hezbollah group was discussed as per reports. Following this, Lebanese information minister said that the cabinet approved the objectives of U.S. envoy Tom Barak's plan, but did not discuss it in full detail. Here's what he said.
فقط اقتصر نقاشنا وقرارنا على الأهداف، على الأوبجكتيفز. ما دخلنا بالمراحل الزمنية. نحن بانتظار تقرير خطة تنفيذية من قبل قيادة الجيش اللبناني لنستكمل القرارات المتممة لقراراتنا سواء اليوم أو بجلسة قبل.
Now we're joined by Keith Vass. He's a former UK minister, joins us live from London. Thank you, Keith, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, do you think this move will be effectively reducing the influence of non-state actors like Hezbollah in Lebanon?
Good afternoon, Asma from London. Well, actually, we're in Leicester today, so good afternoon from Leicester. I think that this is a welcome decision if it can be implemented. Of course, what's important is to understand the pressure the Lebanese government is always under because of the nature of Lebanon, how it was established, the different factions, different groups that are involved. I last went to Lebanon a few years ago, and it was a wonderful, peaceful country. Since then, of course, we've had these attacks going out of Lebanon from Hezbollah, and we've had the attacks coming in from the Israelis. So for the Lebanese people, they have been in the middle. I think the crucial question here, Asma, is whether or not this can be delivered, whether or not the Lebanese government can take control of the situation, or will they be left in a situation which means, to be frank, the conflict will just continue. So getting a deal is great, and we all know that Donald Trump and his envoys are very keen on deals, but it's whether or not they can be implemented. And some people might ask, why hasn't this happened before? The answer is because it's a tough job being Prime Minister of Lebanon and running a country like Lebanon, because everyone else seems to want to be involved. The Americans, the Russians, the Israelis, Hezbollah, everyone else. And so the elected government is in difficulties in deciding what should happen. So let us have a look at the deeds as well as the words. The words are welcome, but at the end of the day, we need the deeds. And the end of the year, we're now in August, it's really only round about 4 months left till the end of the year. So it's not much time to regroup and take control of the country.
Yes, and Keith, just like you mentioned, realistically, there's very less time to implement this. And do you think that Lebanese army is strong enough if Hezbollah is disarmed within Lebanon to protect itself from Israel as well as Syria right next to it?
Well, that is the fear that it must have. But in a sense, even though Hezbollah is a problem, it is a shield, and people are unlikely to want to attack Lebanon because of the presence of Hezbollah. This is a very, very complicated history, and there's only been a very few years in which Lebanon has had absolute peace. It's an absolutely beautiful country. Beirut is one of the great cities of the world, and I think the people of Lebanon want nothing more to get on with their lives and make sure that they are prosperous and strong, and for themselves and their families, they have a future. They can't do that if there is war, if there are constant attacks being made on it by Israel, and Hezbollah using Lebanon as a base to attack Israel. So that is why the Israelis were getting so worked up about it, because of the fact that it is in some way a base against them. So let's hope that the Lebanese government can take control and can ensure that something of value happens.
Yes, let's hope that. Please stay with us, Keith, as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a memorandum which will require universities to collect admissions data to prove they are not shaping student bodies along racial lines. Following this, the White House says the move is aimed at ensuring compliance with the 2023 Supreme Court ruling that struck down affirmative action in college admissions. It further claims that some schools are bypassing the Supreme Court decision by using diversity statements to infer race. We also have the Education Secretary Linda McMahon directing the National Center for Education Statistics to gather data on the race and gender of applicants for both admitted students and enrolled undergraduates. Thereafter, the American Council on Education has criticized the order and called its language vague. The Council also warned that it may be illegal for schools to collect such data. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Keith Vaz. He's a former UK minister. Thank you, Keith, for joining us. Now, what do you make of the White House's move to collect admissions data to enforce their compliance rules?
I think it's very worrying for a government to ask a university to give them their data that they have acquired from the students themselves and hand that over to the government. If this was happening in the Soviet Union, I think the MAGA base would be having a fit. Why is President Putin asking his universities to collect this data and hand it over to the state? It's very authoritarian. It's got nothing to do with freedom of speech. It's got everything to do with the fact that the president has it in for certain institutions. One of them, of course, is Harvard. Nobody knows why, all kinds of rumors as to why they're constantly attacking Harvard. So I suppose he's done it to all universities because he can't do it to some. If he did it to some, then the decision would be open to legal challenge. Now, affirmative action has been an essential part of the way in which the United States comes to terms with its heritage and provides equality for all its citizens. Affirmative action exists in countries like America because groups such as the Afro-Caribbean community have been discriminated against over centuries. That's why it was brought into effect. It's interesting for those of us who are on the side of equality and have been campaigning for equality for many years. Very, very good friend of mine is the Reverend Jesse Jackson from Chicago, who ran for president. They believe that affirmative action is an article of faith. This is the only way that you're going to get change. What Donald Trump will argue is that you've had a country where a black man, Barack Obama, even though he doesn't like Barack Obama, has been elected president of the United States. So he could argue that that's all over. Everyone should admit on the basis of merit. Frankly, yes. I don't think our university, the universities in America, would want to admit students to them and their courses other than on the basis of merit. What affirmative action means is that if you have two candidates who are exactly the same in qualification, when one's a man and one's a woman, you discriminate in favor of a woman. And if you have two candidates and one's black and one's white, you positively discriminate in favor of the Afro-Caribbean person. So it's not about taking people who are not intelligent enough, adequate enough, clever enough to get into places like Harvard. It's about all.
Thank you very
much.
much.
Affirmative action.
Thank you very much, Keith Vaz, for joining us today and sharing your insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our next news, to Africa. A small plane carrying medical staff crashed in a densely populated neighborhood in Kenya's capital on Thursday afternoon, killing 6 people according to local authorities. Let's see what eyewitnesses had to say.
Tulikuwa tumetulia tu nyumbani kidogo kidogo tukasikia mgurumo but hatukujua ni nini. So tukatoka nje kuangalia juu tukaona moshi. So kuona moshi tukaulizana na sister yangu kwani ni nini inaendelea. So our neighbor juu nyumba yao ni ya ghorofa walikuwa juu tukawauliza kwani ni nini inaendelea huko kunatoka moshi. So wakasema ni kama kuna ndege imeanguka.
The Cessna aircraft operated by AMREF Flying Doctors was flying to Hargeisa, the capital of Somalia's breakaway territory of Somaliland. When it went down, in a statement, the charity confirmed it was one of their planes. Kiambu Country Commissioner Henry Wafula said all 4 people on board were killed, along with 2 people on the ground. The Kenya Civil Aviation Authority said the plane took off from Wilson Airport at 2:14 p.m. local time and lost contact with air traffic control just 3 minutes later. One witness said she heard a loud sound, then saw smoke rising over the neighborhood. Crashes involving light aircraft are relatively common in Eastern Africa. In April last year, Kenya's military chief was among 10 people killed in a helicopter crash shortly after takeoff. Let's see what the country commissioner Henry Wafula has to say.
Around 14 hours, 20 minutes, a small aircraft was headed to our borders with Kenya, reliably informed by MREF to Somalia, to evacuate sick people. Unfortunately, this incident happened. So we have lost 4 people, including the pilot. As you can see, the wreckages, it was all fatal. The house that it landed on also had some injuries, serious injuries, and 2 people again also died.
Now for this discussion, we are joined by Vandana Singh. She's an aviation expert. Thank you, Vandana, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, given this
Thank you.
Now, given the circumstances of this crash, also in a densely populated area, what do you think are the key factors that could have contributed to such accident?
Okay, firstly, I was listening to the commissioner, and it's really sad and heartfelt condolences, because these were 4 doctors on board, 2 nurses, the pilot. It's very, very unfortunate to see this happen. And AMREF, as we know, is a known African medical association that is really doing work for emergency, uplift of evacuation, as you just said, evacuation of people, medical emergency at Somalia in this case. So what I have seen, it's very, very sad. Secondly, as we know that area from Nairobi moving into Somalia, and it says shortly after takeoff that this crash has happened. So there could be various factors, for the cause of this accident, contributing to this cause. And one of them, as we know, that the temperatures can vary, of course, anywhere from 25 to 28 or 30 degrees. More than that, there are frequent thunderstorms, there is rain. Of course, in this case, it was partly cloudy, partly sunny, as I heard. But then the weather conditions can change very quickly. So we don't know what the wind shear factor was. We really don't know if there was a vertical wind shear or a horizontal wind shear, because I'm pretty sure the pilots here were very experienced. The Cessna itself, the Citation aircraft, it is very robust. And this is something that AMREF is doing on a daily basis with the kind of equipment and the fleet that they own. Having said that, so cause could be definitely a mechanical or a technical failure that we are hearing, but more that has gone into the probe now. An investigation has been launched, and we have to wait for the result of this as to why this crash happened. But it could be any one of these factors that could be causing it. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Vandana Singh, for always joining us and sharing your insight as an aviation expert. Well, now we move on. The 12th World Games have officially opened in Chengdu, southwest of China, with a grand, colorful ceremony. It has been attended by senior Chinese leaders and global sports officials, including State Councillor Shen Yi-Qin and Sports Minister and Chengdu 2025 Organizing Committee Chair Gao Zidan. This mega event welcomes 6,679 athletes and officials from 116 countries and regions. Over the coming days, competitors will take part in 34 major events, from traditional sports like karate and archery to modern contests such as drone racing and parkour. Organizers say the Games aim to showcase athletic excellence while fostering culture exchange and stronger ties, particularly between China and ASEAN nations. Sports that are set to debut at the 2028 Los Angeles Olympics, such as trampoline, sports climbing, and flag football, will also be featured. Traditional Chinese sports like dragon boat racing and wushu make their first appearance as official competitions. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.